Good morning, Colleen. I'm Nancy Creed, president of the Springfield Regional Chamber, and thank you so much for joining me this morning for coffee. Appreciate it.
Good morning. It's my pleasure, and it's nice to finally see you.
Yes, instead of by email or phone.
Exactly.
So you are the new president and CEO of Viability. You joined around November. So you joined in the middle of a pandemic. So what that experience was like, and for those that aren't watching or that don't know that are watching today, tell me about Viability.
Sure. So Viability is a human services agency, a private human services agency that serves people who have disabilities with a focus on employment, job placement, training, vocational rehab, and life skill building. And the epicenter of all of that is that our mission is about inclusion, equity, and access. And so we have, we serve over 4,000 people. We're in 5 states, but primarily Massachusetts. So we're home-based Massachusetts. And we work with a bunch of employer partners. And I think when you ask, okay, so what was it like coming on board with a pandemic? I think I would say it felt like being windswept. You know how the wind is just blowing and sometimes you're trying to see clearly in the wind, but the wind doesn't stop and it kind of propels you along. But by the same token, you got to batten down some hatches and things like that. So it's a great organization that I've joined, and so the pandemic definitely made it more interesting.
So during the pandemic, I mean, we didn't have workers in the office or on site. How did you manage that challenge?
So for my organization, we did have our staff back on site.
Okay.
The nature of the programs and services that we provide were such that there was just a tiny window of time where I think it was a week, and this was before predated my arrival, where folks were trying to figure out, okay, how do we do this thing? And this is a staff that figured it out. So we were on site, and
That's terrific.
And continuing with virtual services because a number of the people that we served could not come on site or didn't feel comfortable to come on site yet because of perhaps their own individual COVID risks. And so it's been hybrid. And with that, though, that meant both in part because of the size of our organization, but also because I did not think it would do for me to become the super spreader. I wasn't going out to our programs, which is what you normally do as a newcomer.
And so you mentioned that you've got some folks with disabilities. Can you talk to me about what that is and how you kind of integrate them into the workforce?
Sure. So our people with disabilities they have mental illness, may have developmental disabilities, they have be deaf, have hearing disabilities, other kinds of physical disabilities due to accident or birth or some other circumstance in their lives. And additionally, we serve people who have some other kinds of disadvantages. And so what that has meant is that even some of the kinds of remote services that folks would provide had to be adapted further for some of the people that we served. And in some cases, what we found and what will continue is that it's been a wonderful augment to in-person services, and I think other organizations have found the same. And it also, though, was challenging in terms of bringing people back and keeping our staff as well as the people we serve safe, because not all of our members could observe all of the precautions in terms of social distancing and masking.
Mhm.
So I'm proud to say that we did it. We had no spread events, but it was scary.
I can only imagine that the stress, not only on you as a new CEO, but on your whole team trying to navigate through all of this, and the people you serve, especially.
For sure, for sure. And that's, I mean, I think it's what dedication looks like. It's what mission commitment looks like. And I just have to like bow down before our staff, and all of our members and clients who, had plenty of challenges already. Sure as heck didn't need a COVID-19.
Yeah.
And, and they're pivoting right along with us. So.
No, so you are in 5 states, did you say?
We are.
That, how do you manage such a large nonprofit organization?
So yeah, great question. We're in Massachusetts, predominantly Massachusetts, in Connecticut, Rhode Island, New York, and Oklahoma.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah. And it's one of those things that I actually did get to go down to Oklahoma in April. So I was fully vaccinated in February. So I've been visiting our programs very judiciously since then, keeping 2 weeks in between. And it is very different. But what I will say is that the muscle of how you do things remotely was a muscle we needed to acquire, and now we have it. And so that has been really helpful. We've had more meetings in terms of, because you can meet virtually, and in terms of communicating. And that's been something that I felt it was important for me to do early on. Being new was just kind of, so I would, I'd have some regular meetings. I send something to our staff every week. I started staff town hall calls. And if you can't, make it for that time, they're recorded and we share those out. It has, though, been just weird because when I see people in person, as I started to do slowly, I'm only seeing here up. So I have no idea what's going on here. And sort of that getting to know you is a little tricky. And then, of course, even when I see them in Zoom, I can't match that up with the here up. And then sometimes people's identifications, their names on the Zoom isn't their names. It might be the program's name. It might be somebody else's laptop they're sitting in front of. So it's a little twisted.
So let's talk about your background. You have 30 plus years of experience in the human service world. What got you on that career path? Was there a moment in time where you said, this is what my mission is?
There wasn't actually. So my first human services job, actually, fun fact, is that Viability is the result of a merger of 2 organizations, Community Enterprises and Human Resources Unlimited. And I actually started in human services those many moons ago that you mentioned, with Human Resources Unlimited.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Coming to Viability is kind of like this full circle moment, which is super cool. And it's one of the things that pulled me back from a job that actually I loved and people that I actually loved. So, so I think that what I have come to recognize about myself is that every career choice I've had, and I've had a couple few, I've been a marketing manager in insurance. I have been a dancer and a choreographer. I toured for a while in that capacity. I owned a dance studio for a while. I've been a consultant in organizational development and human resources, a lot of HR work, volunteerism, programs, membership. And so for a long time, I was like, what is wrong with me? Why do I not have this straight line going on? And then I came to recognize that, that what I am is a capacity builder. And I am drawn to work where I can contribute to the capacity building of individuals, organizations, and communities. And beyond that, the labels just didn't really matter to me.
I think that's a great point, because I think there are a lot of leaders that don't take that linear path. That I call it just following your passion.
Yeah, I mean, you know, when you're looking at everybody else who's kind of just checking on their resumes are so neat and fit quite nicely, the trajectory, and then here I came. And yeah, so it's nice to be at a point in my career where I actually get myself.
So you mentioned dancing, because I did want to ask you about that, because I'm not so sure people know that about you, that you founded a studio and you toured and you were a professional dancer. Do you miss it? Do you still dance?
I still dance. I still teach some classes and work with some students. You know, some people play tennis, some people golf, run, I dance. And when I don't, I miss the creativity of it and the absorption of it. That I think a lot. And I think everybody that's in a leadership role thinks a lot. You always have to do all this self-reflection and assessment and thinking about your organization and looking ahead and what have you. And in the studio is the place where that totally absorbs my brain. So it might seem like it's divergent, but it doesn't feel divergent at all for me. And it's still very much capacity building.
And it must have been a great opportunity to have that outlet during all of this, when we all were thinking way too much.
That was probably one of the toughest things, because when the pandemic hit, the studio closed and remained closed for quite a while because there were no guidelines. And it took the state a really long time to be able to come to that. It was new for everybody. And the demands, as I'm sure it was for every other leader of an organization that was working directly with people and not, you know, just with paper or something and machines, it was 24/7. It was 24/7. And what you thought you knew in the morning and you were working on in the morning, you know, by 11 a.m., maybe noon, that changed and you had to figure out something else with your people. And so that was a tough time. I'm really proud of the work that my then team did. And as I've come to Viability, of the work that this team did before I came and since. And as the studio reopened and I was able to go back with very limited number of students and, you know, teaching with a mask on and with some students on the screen and attending class virtually from their homes, I was just glad to be there.
Is there something that you've learned about yourself through all of this, like an aha moment?
You know, I don't know that there was an aha moment. I think that there are many things in terms of my life and in terms of what I've learned from so many years of working with people who, for whom, social injustice is named, and for all of those struggles, and seeing what those individuals go through, what myself and my family have gone through in terms of social injustices and racial inequity and the life challenges that we all have. But I think because of those things, this was hardship, and I'm not going to pretend here. I had a nice life growing up. We weren't wealthy by a long shot, but we were always okay. And if we weren't, I never knew it. But there are some things that touch you, even when you're okay in those ways. And certainly racism and genderism are included in that. So no, there wasn't an aha moment. I didn't know how, but I knew that I and we would figure out whatever it was we had to figure out. And I prayed a lot, more than usual. Yeah.
Now, you touched on it a bit, but in your previous role, you wrote a very powerful statement on racism. Why was that important for you, and what can we learn from that?
I have spent a lot of my professional life not using racism as a reason or an excuse. It's how I was brought up, and I'm grateful for that, because it can just plow you under. And because of that, I put it so far to the side that that it may have seemed to people like I wasn't experiencing it. And as this latest racial reckoning came about, I felt that it would be a disservice to my staff, to the people we served, who experienced racism and, again, all kinds of other social injustices. And as I came to Viability and returned to Viability in some sense, the inequities of being a person with a disability and knowing that people aren't pieces, parts. You're a person with a disability. You may have a mother, you may have children, you may have issues of race, you may have issues around, your other identities as an LGBTQ plus individual, and so on. And I felt that it was important to honor those relationships and those people, and name it.
Who inspires you?
Oh, well, my goodness, that could be a long list. We don't have that kind of time. I will say that my parents inspired me. They're both passed away, but that inspiration is still there. Just my family, my own children inspire me. My staff inspire me, because we all bring something different to the table, and I've got some skills and they've got some different skills, and boy, did they rock. And just at any given moment, individual people that I meet, some of my colleagues, other leaders in organizations inspire me. I think inspiration is all over the place, and I'm grateful for it.
And before we wrap up, Colleen, one final question. What words of advice would you give our next generation of leaders?
Oh, good golly. I think that I would say that I'm still learning this myself, but, and somebody else said this, it's not original. Done is better than perfect. And that, you know, particularly for females, and the data is there for why I would say this, that you don't have to be 100% to be 100% valuable. And so own what you have to bring to the world and bring it. And, you know, when you fall down, you know, get the Band-Aids out. And it'll be okay. The world needs you.
I think that's great advice. I'm going to take it to heart because sometimes I forget that that I don't have to be perfect. So Colleen, I very much appreciate you joining me this morning. Good luck to you in your new job. I can't wait to actually see you in person at an event outside, say hello, but thank you again for joining me this morning. I appreciate it.
And thank you so much for having me. It's been fun.
We'll see you soon.